Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we're going to do a little Locked On crossover with Josh Neighbors, the host of Locked On Nationals, a crossover episode to preview this quick two-game Beltway battle between the O's and the Nats coming up at Camden Yards tonight and tomorrow. And we'll talk a little bit about how the Orioles have been playing much better baseball this year. We'll talk about why the Nats have been so bad and how 3 years removed from a World Series, the Orioles are somehow better than the Nationals. And then we'll talk a little bit about the state of each team in terms of the pitching matchups for this series and a couple of players you might not know on the Nationals that you should look out for. Plus, of course, a little bit of MASN talk like we do every time when we cross over with Josh. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The MASN boys are back together. Connor Newcomb is joining me. I am Josh Neighbors, host of Locked On Nationals. Connor Newcomb is the host of Locked On Orioles. Connor, first of all, how are we? How, just generally speaking, life, everything. We don't talk very often, so how are we doing?
We're doing good over here. I do think, Josh, now we talked about, what we wanted to discuss on this crossover. We're obviously here because the Beltway Battle is happening for the first of two times this year. But I think we're going to escape this episode without railing on MASN for the first time in a Nationals-Orioles crossover history. We will see, but I think that is at least the initial plan.
So how is things good on the Orioles side of MASN?
And here we go.
I just want to know. We mentioned it, so might as well.
Kevin Brown this year signed as the basically full-time TV voice of the Orioles. They had kind of been cycling through some people since they didn't re-sign Gary Thorne. But Kevin Brown basically took Gary's spot this year. He's amazing. He's the Orioles' best broadcaster. Everybody loves him across the board. He's not Gary Thorne yet, but he's great. So that's been good. Ben McDonald's awesome. I don't know if you've watched any of the College World Series with Ben McDonald calling the game.
He's been calling college games forever.
Right. And once he leaves the Orioles for the NCAA tournament, and then once College World Series is over, he comes back. He's something else. He had a great moment on the College World Series broadcast the other day that I tweeted out where he literally had no idea who Dua Lipa was. I believe it was Eduardo Perez who was in the booth with him, made a Dua Lipa reference, and Ben McDonald was just flustered. Incredibly
I believe he's like old school because where is he from? Yeah, so he's from Baton Rouge.
Yeah,
so he's like old school Southern baseball dude.
Yeah,
so
no, he doesn't own a computer.
Classic.
He has said on the air that he owns an iPad and he owns an iPhone. He does not own a laptop or a computer and never has of any kind.
He just strikes me as a guy who's like the physical calendar. It's like I have game at 4. Show up. Yeah. Things are good on the national side too. It is Bob Carpenter, who's been there forever, and Kevin Franzen, former National. Obviously, he's been all over the place. So he's there. What's funny is, though, Ryan Zimmerman has joined the pregame, the pregame festivities now. But it's almost like, man, if he had called it quits a little bit earlier, he probably would have been the guy doing color commentary.
Right.
Because the thing was, we talked about this before, like MASN was cutting down on the number of people that were there. They got rid of Dan Kolko and Alex Chappell, and they brought Kolko back. So the fact that they were cutting back before kind of makes you think, they're really going out of their way to bring Zim on, which I thought was really interesting. But I think he's been good so far. And, Dan Kolko also appears to be the heir apparent, I think, to Bob Carpenter. He's been around for a long time, calling games all over. If you live on the East Coast, he's probably called college baseball for your team. He's probably called pro baseball for your team. He's called, lacrosse maybe for your team. So, I think not many complaints for us on the MASN side, right?
Yeah. So there's probably more complaints on the baseball side, though. I would guess, especially in DC right now.
Yes, we will get to that here in 1 second. First, quick word from our sponsors, rockauto.com. Our friends there, if you need a part for your car or truck, tires, carpet, upholstery in your car, whatever you guys need, rockauto.com has you covered with the ever-increasing number of makes and models. It's now impossible for you to go to your local chain or auto parts store to get all the parts that you need. Don't endure the often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning of, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? Don't do that. RockAuto.com has you covered. Family-run business, serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Don't spend 30, 50, even 100% more than you should be at a chain store. Go to rockauto.com today. When you do, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box. That way they know we sent you. Amazing selection, always low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. All right, so yeah, baseball side, Connor, these two teams aren't great. I like to set up my shows normally by talking about where each team is in their standings. So we will start with your Baltimore Orioles. Right now, they are 30-38, 20 games back at the first place Yankees, which, they're amazing, so it's fine. 17-16 at home. I like things like this. That's a positive, right? Above 500 at home. That is a positive. They have a minus 39 run differential, which in that division is pretty good, actually. You could do worse. You could do worse than that. They're 6-4 in the last 10. They've won one game. So, the Orioles have hit 30 wins a month earlier than they did it last year.
Yeah. And that's kind of the number one big thing. I mean, they're playing better baseball. And the big thing with it is, I believe they were 7-14 in April. Since then, the Orioles had a 14-16 May, which, just under 500. And they are 9-8 so far in June coming into this series against the Nationals. So, they are kind of what they're reminding me of a little bit. And this isn't going to spell a lot of positive future because the Tigers have been horrendous this year. But if you remember last year, the Tigers were the worst team in baseball in April. And then they played over 500 baseball from May on. So everyone thought, all right, Tigers are our sexy pick. They added some people in the offseason. This year they're going to do it. Well, the Tigers have fallen apart this year. So maybe I don't want to go too far into that comparison, but that's kind of what the Orioles are looking like right now. Terrible April, and then they kind of figure out who belongs on the roster, who doesn't. And all of a sudden, they've got a pretty dominant bullpen. They've got the second best closer in the American League in Jorge Lopez right now. And again, everybody in the world knows they're going to finish in fifth place because the other four teams are all in a playoff spot right now.
Yes.
So this division is just terrible for the Orioles to be in right now. But to be 30-38 right now, and they're 14-19 against the American League East. That's not bad. They were 20-56 against the AL East last year. They're 14-19 so far this year. Huge improvement against four really, really good baseball teams. So at the end of the day, the O's are still last place team. They're still not close to the playoffs this year, but they are significantly improved from last year. And I mean, you want to see progress at this point in this rebuild, and the Orioles are finally getting that.
I was about to use the word progress, and I'm so glad you did it, because the big conversation, I think I'm sure you've had it too, for teams like the Orioles and the Nationals, is what does progress look like, right? Is progress a number of wins? Is progress found in individual performances? All the time, these are questions that fans, especially, I think the fans ask it more often, right? Because internally, there are certain goals. It's icing on the cake if you win a certain amount of games, right? But really, internally, they have goals of all right, these, which players are we keeping long term? Which young players do we want to be at certain points where? And so that's a big question, right? What does progress look like? Are the Orioles at a point now where you're starting to look at win numbers, or are you at a point for the Orioles where you're like, no, it's all about, I hate to say individuals, but it's all about, hey, certain guys, and if some guys step up and are unexpected and they can keep them around, that's great. Or if they turn to the trade assets, that's great. Because that's kind of where I'm at with the Nationals. Are you looking at win numbers of the Orioles, or is it a little combination of both with individual performances and wins?
Yeah, I think last year was definitely the last year where you could say the win number isn't at least equally as important as the development. Right. And that was shown by the Orioles' 52-110 record, which ended up tied with Arizona for the worst record in baseball. And through the tiebreakers, the Orioles got the number one pick once again. This year, you had to show some progress because, this is a date that hasn't been set in stone by Mike Elias or the front office, but a year that's kind of been alluded to by him a little bit and by some of the, the bigger name writers who cover the team, and the fans have kind of latched on that in the offseason between 2022 and 2023, which would be this upcoming offseason, the Orioles will spend at least a little money. And 2023 becomes the year where they're at least competitive in the AL East. Now, no one has said playoffs or title contender or whatever, but competitive. And so you can't just go from 52 wins to competitive. Like you got to hit 70 in there at some point before you get into the 80s. And
Right.
once you're at least a 500 team, you're competitive. Like the Phillies finished basically 500 last year, but I would call them a competitive baseball team all year. Now they were a hilarious competitive baseball team, but they were competitive.
They still are hilarious.
Yeah, they still are.
I would say very much still hilarious,
Yeah.
even though they're good.
But the O's are on pace right now for 70 wins. And at the end of the day, if you can go from 52 to 70 without bringing in anyone in free agency, I did an episode last week ranking the Orioles 7 free agents that they brought in. Most of them were on minor league deals, a couple waiver claims. It's ugly. So if they bring in literally anyone next offseason, maybe you can go from 70 to 81. So this year, to answer your question, it's kind of the first year where the wins matter because guys are here. The bullpen is starting to come together. You know, you're getting more than just looks at guys. You know, they're kind of starting to cement themselves on the roster. And yeah, it's nice that more wins are coming when they matter more. But you also have to take that next step next year, and that probably starts in the offseason. But at the end of the day, it's like the O's added Jordan Lyles and Rougned Odor and are on a plus 18 win pace.
Right.
Well, obviously they added Adley Rutschman too, but you know that's generally a positive.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting about these teams is like the divisions are really similar, right? I mean, they are facing these massive. I call them like conglomerates, right? Like it's like the Yankees are a Fortune 500 company, right? At this point in time, the Red Sox, they still spend a decent amount of money. Like you're not bringing in Trevor Story and be like, yeah, we're fine with being average, whatever. Clearly the Blue Jays want to win. I think the one thing that I'm not sure if this, tell me what you think here, negative or positive, having the Rays in the division, right? Having them be the Kmart, the discount store that does it somehow not once again, I'm not demeaning their players, but like, they'll make trades to make position, make money for trades that they make. They're not willing to say, all right, we'll take it all in 1 year. No, they make moves to make moves. Is that negative or positive? Because in some ways it shows that you can get it done, but also they feel like such an outlier, don't they? With the way they're able to consistently do it.
Yeah. In terms of like how it affects the Orioles, it's a negative on the place that the one other team that isn't spending in your division is also winning 3 divisions in a row. So, and went to the World Series in 2020. So in that way, it's like, wow, in just a vacuum, you would think, well, this team doesn't spend anything. You can at least hope to jump to 4th and then go from there. But they are the best run, probably, front office in, past.
There's an argument like in pro sports.
Yeah.
There's an argument in pro
sports.
But
I would say the positive side is I don't want the Orioles to become the Rays. I want them to look more like Toronto or Boston, at least by the end of this. I don't want them to become the team that is flipping, unless you're Wander Franco, they're flipping you after 6 years and, going on to the next guy. But at least there's a blueprint for how to win in this AL East, spending like they are. And the O's are building up in the way that Tampa did. And they've showed the blueprint. And it's not just the last couple of years. I mean, they were in the World Series in 2008 as well. Like they've, they go through their little dips where they'll have 2 years where they just kind of reset everything and then they come right back to it. But it's kind of, it's a give and take because it's like, if they can do it, we can do it. On the other side, it's like, it'd be nice to have somebody to maybe be able to beat up on 1 year. And I'm also a little concerned because the last time the Orioles were good, I mean, 2014, they won the AL East. The Yankees were so old. It was like at the end of Jeter, the end of A-Rod. They were holding on to those guys too long, and they just hadn't embraced that like a prospect can help you too, and that, a good farm system can help you too. And the Red Sox were off a World Series hangover and just kind of weren't caring, and everything bounced right for the Orioles. And I feel that those kind of weird years for the Yankees and Red Sox just aren't going to come as much now because they used to just be, we'll spend our way out of it. And now they're like, we can still spend our way out of it. And we have a great front office and we have a great analytics department and we have a great farm system. So it's going to be tough moving forward. But at least the Rays have showed you can do it. So maybe the O's can do it too.
Yeah, it's that's what makes the AL East like just fascinating. Although I will say this, you see the guys that are getting it done for like the Yankees, and it's, if they did that thing where they just like average next year for the first month, kind of like last year, they were average for a very long time last year. Like it wouldn't totally shock me, although it feels like they figured it out now. But the problem is, the Red Sox always feel like they're just looming right there. They're always a year away from making a couple changes and going for it. They're obviously super interested in the Rays. Like you said, they can reset whenever they want. I want to mention this. Like Washington has more pro sports than Baltimore does. I firmly believe Baltimore is a better baseball city, and I also firmly believe the league is better than the Orioles are better. I think it's a good brand. I think it's a really good East Coast brand. I think it's one of the most slept on brands in all of pro sports. The Orioles are. So shout out to the Orioles fans out there. I know you guys are awesome fan base. Just want to give you guys that props. You wanted to talk about this though, how these two teams kind of cross paths. So I will say the one thing Washington does well is get behind a winner. Not saying they're fair weather, but like the Capitals have been one of the best supported teams in the NHL in the last 20, 25 years. And that's with them crapping out in the playoffs constantly. But people keep coming back, and getting disappointed. They keep coming back. Got a title, get disappointed again. So
got the cup, got the one cup.
Yeah, got the cup. But like I will say this, Washington they're very good at attaching themselves, and they keep supporting. This transition has been a weird one that we've seen, because really, like, I think that 18 title for the Caps. Are you a Caps fan? I always forget.
Yes, I am.
So like really got to be appreciated, right? The 19 title doesn't get the shine because COVID happened after it. And so there wasn't this full stands, next year we're enjoying it, even though it's a hangover, we're enjoying it. And let's see if we can push them through. Like it was a 60-game season where things went completely sideways. And then in a year where they had some people in the stands, by the time that we have full stands back, it's like a month in and then all the guys are gone. And so it's been this thing where it's like the Nationals fans kind of blinked twice. They've been punched in the mouth a few times here, and the Orioles are by them, which feels like it was unfathomable a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got a team that wins the title in 2019, and this will maybe, I don't know if this will offend the Nationals fans listeners, but I wouldn't say it's the most.
It can't be more offensive than the play on the field. So
yes, I wouldn't say it's the most undeserved title that's happened in the 21st century, because they rode three hot relievers and Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer, of course, and just kind of rode those guys. And Juan Soto turned himself into a superstar, and like they had the pieces of a championship team. Yeah. But just the way that team was built, and it was just like a couple stars and some old guys on their last legs, and the way they got through that postseason, obviously with the Trent Grisham play and Joe Kelly still pitching in Game 5, and clearly they dominated the NLCS, but that Cardinals team was downright horrendous. I don't know how they got to the NLCS.
Yeah, that was the. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I was like, this is going to be a sweep. I felt pretty good about that one. Yeah, you're right.
Again, they were a good team. Like, I'm not saying this bad team showed up, but like,
right.
They the whole 19-31 thing, like there was a reason they were 19-31. Like this team wasn't like uber talented. This is like the least depth from any champion we've seen in a while in Major League Baseball. So it makes sense that they would take a step back over the next couple of years. But to be here, where, I mean, not only in record are the Orioles better. I mean, the O's have, 4 more wins right now, I believe. The Nats have 26 wins going into the series. But my question is, like, they still went and added a little bit. And, with Josh Bell and Nelson Cruz, and those are kind of duct tape on a...
Getting traded. They're getting traded.
They're traded. Those guys are getting traded, too. We know that. And, Strasburg basically hasn't pitched since the World Series. He came back for one start, went right back on the injured list. And I get that. And obviously Scherzer leaves in free agency after trading him, and they trade Turner. So you get why they're losing more, because they traded some of their pieces. But like, this is a long-winded way of saying, how did it get so bad that, like, I think if anyone just looked at the Nats roster, and maybe it's just because of Juan Soto and guys like that, but they wouldn't say like the Orioles have definitely more talent. A lot more talent than the Nationals. Like, how did it get this bad?
I've been thinking about this, and I want to get your thoughts about this. Like, the Astros, in my opinion, have done a really good job of window maintenance. I just want to call it, not like physical windows, but like obviously championship window maintenance, right? They only got one, but they've been there a bunch. Think about the Nationals. they won the division, I forget how many times, between 12 and 19. Four, I think it was 4 out of 7 or 8, whatever it was. They were there a whole lot. So they won it at like the last stage of the window. Give it to you this way. Like, imagine if the Capitals won the championship now. Like this year they had won it. I think that's kind of what it's like. Because think about it this way too. So the choice between Strasburg and Rendon, right? Either way, it would have been an abject failure.
Yeah, Rendon's done for the year.
Yeah, he's done for, exactly. And so I think Stevens played a lot less than Rendon has, obviously. And even if you scale it out, pitchers wise versus position player wise, he still played less. But a bill for success always comes due. It's why Tyreek Hill is currently in the Miami Dolphins. There is a bill. Rent comes due for when you win championships. And for the Nationals, rent was due in terms of age for some of those players. Adam Eaton was done. Zim was actually, I'll give Ryan Zim this, pretty good off the bench bat last year, but like the innings tax, we saw it with the Giants to pay the innings tax when they had that every other year thing. The off year was the innings tax, right? And Strasburg paid it. I'm not even sure if Corbin's paying the innings tax. He's just banned now, which is something totally different. He's just horrible now. But like it comes due with all that stuff. And so I think they just won a title at the back stretch of a window that, yeah, look, they want it to be longer, right? The reason why you pay Strasburg, you pay Corbin, there should have been some time where Strasburg, Corbin, Scherzer overlapped just a little bit, and you maybe get a year or two more of success. So I just think timing. I think timing and circumstance is all of that. But the Nationals are in a spot now where like Josh Bell's been their best player, right? This is a team that won a World Series in 2019. A guy who wasn't on the team then has been their best player this year. And they're 22 games under 500.
Yeah.
So it's timing and circumstance. That's a lot of stuff in sports, a lot of stuff in life. But like timing and circumstance, all of it. The question is, the team's up for sale now. So who buys it? Who runs it? Who manages it? Crazy things to ask after you win a championship. That's short, but that's a long way of saying, I guess, things happen in weird ways.
Yeah.
Timing.
And you talk about ownership too. Like the Orioles are having their own whole ownership situation with, a brother suing the other. And, that's a whole nother podcast, but I guess we can bring it back to this series in a second, but I'll hit our Built Bar ad read here before we get to what's going on in this quick little 2-game series at Camden Yards. But we'll talk about Built Bar because listen, if you listen to Locked On Orioles or Locked On Nationals, you know how our friends at Built Bar are always coming out with amazing new flavors. Well, this time Built has truly outdone themselves with their new mud pie flavor.
Have you had it yet?
The first time ever.
Have you had it yet?
Well, no, I have not had the mud pie, but just reading the ingredients, no. I can give it everything. Yeah, we need.
Connor is delicious.
Well, there's your endorsement right there from Josh.
Delicious.
There's your endorsement.
It's the best one they've done so far. I'm dead ass serious.
But if you're not, sure what mud pie tastes like, well, if you're a chocolate fan, you better sit down for this. The new mud pie is rich whipped cream and chocolate mousse smothered in 100% real chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. And if you saw Josh just go full surrender cobra right there, that is basically your invitation to check out the Mud Pie Bar. You will not regret it. Stop drooling. Get to Built.com to order your box of Mud Pie Bars and Puffs as well right now. So go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order of that box of Mud Pie Bars or whatever your favorite flavor is. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. So now that everybody's hungry, I hope you're also hungry for a Beltway battle. Orioles, Nationals, what a transition. 2 teams that have 30 wins or less right now. And so this is where I wanted to start with quickly kind of previewing these 2 games because we'll get 2 more games at Nats Park later in the season. So the Orioles haven't officially named their starters as we talk. I have a pretty good idea of who they're going to start. Jordan Lyles was supposed to start Sunday. He got a stomach bug. He's probably going to be pushed back for one of these games. And then most likely Tyler Wells, who's been the Orioles' best starter this year, will start the other one. So, a lot of headline names going in this series.
Yeah, big
but
names.
I wanted to pose to you. So Eric Fedde and Patrick Corbin are the 2 probables for this series. If the Nationals, for some reason, needed to win one game right now, would you send Eric Fedde or Patrick Corbin to the mound?
Eric Fetty. I mean, I think that's where we're at. Patrick Corbin is like embarrassingly bad. He is at a point, and this is not new. This is 2020. This is 2021, 2022. His best ability is availability. Like, he's out there, but he's just getting rocked basically every time. Last outing, he got lucky because an error happened, but he gave up 8 runs, and 2 of them were earned because of an error at end of the inning. But he followed up an error with like a double and 2 home runs. I mean, this guy cannot. He's falling behind everybody. The slider, when it's coming. His confidence is clearly shot. So I would not send him out there. Eric Fetty is like just pretty average. So average can win you a game more often than abject failure can. So I will go with Eric Fetty.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. After what Patrick Corbin did to help this Nats team, obviously win a World Series.
Yeah. The Patrick Q. Orban, not great.
Yeah, but on the O side, Tyler Wells, Rule 5 pick last year, reliever last year. O's have made him into a starter, and he does not walk anyone. Like, legitimately, if he walks 2 guys, something weird happened, and he'll go 5 or 6 innings. Now, he doesn't strike out a ton of guys, but he's really efficient. He's really fun to watch pitch. Big, huge, like 6'5" right-hander. And then Jordan Lyles is Jordan Lyles. He's a veteran righty. He eats innings. He's not anything super special, but that's probably who the O's will throw out there. I mean, Bruce Zimmerman, who was their ace early in the year, would have started one of these games. He's literally given up 15 homers in his last 6 starts.
I was going to say, are we going to put ace? Are we putting ace in quotations?
Yes. But he's in AAA now, so they're lucky they got the off day Monday to kind of reset the rotation right now. But I mean, listen, we know Tyler Wells right now is the best of the 4 pitchers who will be pitching in this series, and I don't think Tyler Wells really moves the needle for a lot of people outside of Baltimore. So I guess we turn to the offense, and you mentioned Josh Bell being the best hitter on this team. Where are we with Juan Soto right now? Because I know he's not godlike Juan Soto so far this year, but he's heating up a little bit. So where are we in the Juan Soto 2022?
He's been bad by his standards, pretty bad. I mean, he's hit 14 home runs, so that's good. He's on pace for 30 plus home runs. Really bad with runners in scoring position. That's been his struggle. And also, he's not hitting lefties. Those are the 2 big things. Guys on, and he's not hitting lefties very well. Walking a whole lot, but just not the guy who's making you give me something in the strike zone, and I'm going to make something happen. There are a lot of times where guys – so here's what happens. A lot of the times, guys will throw something out of the zone against him, and part of the time, he's taking it and he's walking, and part of the time, he's trying to make something happen. And I think that, to me, is kind of the breakdown there. It can be pretty simple. There are some pitches in the zone that have gotten him, maybe a challenge fastball here or there, but a lot of times, stuff out of the zone, and he's like, it's a good count. I want to make something happen in this count. And he's getting, there's a reason why the walk numbers are high. Also a reason why the batting average isn't very, very high either. So I think those 2 things kind of go hand in hand. His select, I would just rather watch him walk a whole lot. And I actually think there's a chance that maybe in a weird world, he should be a leadoff hitter. I think there is a planet where maybe he should be a leadoff hitter, especially if he's hitting this way. I think he's better off towards the front of the lineup, maybe.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Yeah. Wanted to finish this up at least with kind of, the way these.
Hold on. Can we do Adley Rutschman? Can we talk about this really fast?
Oh, we can talk about Adley Rutschman, of course.
How's that been? I mean, one of the greatest viral moments of the last couple of years in baseball. I mean, him enjoying the moment, I should say.
Yes.
How's it been so far?
So he was not hitting early, and some people went crazy. But if you look at what Bobby Witt and Julio Rodriguez did their first 3 weeks in the big leagues, I mean, Julio Rodriguez literally just went up and struck out like every time he went to the plate his first 2 weeks. Now he's the best hitter on the Mariners. Adley is making that turn over the last week. He is hitting over 300 in his last 9 games. He finally hit his first home run in Toronto on Wednesday night. He's starting to drive the ball, more extra base hits. And he's just an elite defensive catcher. I mean, his framing is ridiculous. He's got a above average throwing arm, and his pop time is good enough where the arm is not elite, but he still throws runners out. Mm-hmm. Obviously a switch hitter. He's already become a leader on this team. I mean, he's 24 years old. He's a rookie. And, he's got such a great relationship with all these pitchers. I mean, Jorge Lopez strikes out Brett Phillips on Sunday to end the game and clinch a series win over the Rays, a team that beat the Orioles 18 out of 19 in 2021. The Orioles have now won back-to-back series against the Rays this year, and they close out a 2-1 win over the Rays to win the series. And Adley is just fired up. I mean, catches the strikeout and leaps up, like throws the hockey style mask off, pumps himself up, like sprints out to Jorge Lopez at the mound. I mean, he just brings the juice that the Orioles have had from some guys like Rougned Odor and Austin Hayes and others, like, do bring the juice to this team. But like, Adley's at a whole nother level at times. He's been so fun to watch over the past week now that he started hitting as well. And he's basically penciled into fifth in the lineup right now. You know, it's not like, hey, we're hitting you second or third, you know, carry us to the promised land. But we know you're one of the better hitters on this team. So he's just kind of penciled into fifth when he plays. He's DHing a little bit to, you know, save his knees early in his career, but still catching, you know, 3 to 4 times a week. It's just been awesome. And, you know, he's not Juan Soto, and he's not as good as Juan Soto was immediately when he came up either. So it's a little bit of a different thing. But I mean, it's been generally awesome. Generally awesome.
I'm happy for you. I'm very happy for you.
So my last thing I wanted to do is, because of these two teams and how they're built, I would have a good feeling that there's at least one guy on each team who's producing, who the general fan of the other side has never heard their name. So I will give you the Orioles. There's a couple of Orioles versions. I'll give you the Orioles guy first, then I'll have you give the Nats guy to finish this up. But for the O's, there's probably a couple of guys you could pick out here. I mean, Austin Hayes is having his breakout year, but he's been around for long enough that I think Nats fans may know who he is. Jorge Lopez, who I just mentioned, has a 0.8 ERA as the Oriole closer. His numbers mirror what Zach Britton did in 2016, which is just ridiculous. But I will give you a name that Nats fans probably don't know, and that is Felix Bautista. He is about a 6'7", 270-pound right-handed reliever who's basically acting as the Orioles setup man right now. He throws 101 miles an hour from over the top, has basically the highest spin fastball in baseball. So because it's so fast and spins so much, and he throws it from all the way over the top, and he's 6'7", the ball basically starts up here and rises. And it's impossible to hit. Then he has just a fall off the table splitter and kind of a bad slider I want him to stop throwing. But he is ridiculous. He'll pitch the 7th or the 8th. It's just hilarious to see him get out there on the mound. He's so much bigger than everybody else. Like, he's bigger than Aaron Judge. And he's just pounding fastballs by guys. And people are starting to kind of know who he is out of the Oriole bullpen. He spent 8 years in the minor leagues because he couldn't throw strikes. He was throwing 99, but he didn't know where it was going. So he spent 8 years in the minor leagues before finally getting to the bigs. His walk rate in his first big league season this year is lower than any walk rate he had in the minors, which is just the weirdest thing in the world. You would think
anomaly is what we call that.
Send it the other way. Yeah. So I have a couple guys in mind you might mention, but who is kind of the Nats version? Can be a hitter, can be a pitcher.
Well, I know Orioles fans know nothing about Maikel Franco, a player they've never heard anything about. Maikel Franco is second at bats on this team. So I just want to shout this out for the Orioles fans out there. He's had a really nice offensive season. He is third in runs driven in. He is ahead of Juan Soto in runs driven in this year. So there you go. Shout out Maikel Franco. One of those guys you mentioned, like the minor league deals thing, that he was one of those guys in the minor league deal. So I'm gonna give you a couple young guys. Keibert Ruiz, maybe you heard about him. The only reason you would have is because he was in that trade. Catcher. So if you're looking at Adley's counterpart on the other side, another young catcher, Keibert Ruiz, who has been fantastic. This guy he's got a better arm than Adley. I would say Adley's probably the better athlete, actually, out of the two. You mentioned like Adley's jump time, his reaction time, really, really good. He's a little better of an athlete. Keibert's got the arm, though. He has got a pistol for an arm, and so he's been throwing guys out, back picking. I mean, he's got the full arsenal. So he's been fantastic, and at the plate, he's been really good too. Also, Luis Garcia. No, not the pitcher from the. If you Google Luis Garcia, the first one you get is going to be the Astros pitcher,
and not the other pitcher.
Not the other. No, not the other pitcher. Yeah. It is the Nationals shortstop who came up to replace Alcides Escobar, because we had to do that again this year. He was raking in AAA in 19 games. He's hit 360 so far in the big leagues. He's a kid. He is going to make mistakes in the field. He's fun to watch, though, and he's a big part of the Nationals' future. He just came up and started hitting immediately. So K-Bear Ruiz, a young guy named Michael Franco, the Orioles fans know nothing about. And also, I'll give you Luis Garcia, too. Those guys. Also, maybe Yadiel Hernandez in the back of the lineup, too. So there you go. There's some guys.
Yeah, I think the general baseball population probably not tuning in for this series, but we know Orioles fans don't like the Nationals. I don't really know how Nationals fans feel about the Orioles, but it's the massive
Is there dislike? Hold on. Is there dislike here?
There
I
is.
feel like it's a whole lot of people go to the games who are like, oh, I'm a Nats fan. He's a Nose fan. This will be fun.
There's some dislike. I think it's because of just the Nats coming in, and obviously there's some old Orioles fans who became Nationals fans, and I think people don't like that. I think, a lot of the MASN lawsuit has to do with the Angeloses, but it also has to do with just the existence of the Nats kind of brought that on.
That's very fair.
And so I think some people have some gripes there. But we got O's Nats, so take us out, Josh. We got O's, we got Nats. The people listening are going to be watching. Maybe not a lot of other people, but the people listening to this pod are going to be watching.
Yes, we know you all who are listening are going to be watching. Connor, one more thing from you. Tell people where they can find you and your work and all of its variety.
Yeah, so at Connor Newcomb _ on Twitter and at Locked On Orioles on Twitter. And then wherever you get Locked On Nationals podcast-wise, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever, you can also get Locked On Orioles.